Hello, everyone, and welcome to Metro TV. I'm your host, Andy Hoig, publisher and CEO of Metro Magazine. This is our 100th episode, and I'm so excited to talk to three amazing individuals. I'll be chatting with David Brown from the Omaha Chamber, Carmen Tapio from North End Teleservices, and Janyne Emsick from Your Executive Coach. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Well, welcome everybody. I am here with David Brown. He is the president and CEO of the Omaha Chamber. David, thank you for joining me today.
Happy to be here, as always. Good to see you.
As part of our 100th episode, I just thought it would be appropriate. Let's talk about the city, kind of what's going on. But also, you've been at the Chamber since 2003?
Long time, yep.
Long time. So what brought you? Let's just a little history. What brought you here?
Well, I'm from the Midwest originally, Detroit area. I guess Michiganders consider themselves still a part of the Midwest, even though Nebraskans might not think of Michigan that way. But my wife and I are both from Michigan, worked in Indiana for a while, and then took a stint down in South Carolina. And while we loved it there, we had a 10-year-old at the time, decided we wanted to get him into an area that was more focused on good public schools and get back to the Midwest because we were kind of craving getting back into our home roots, if you will. And so we were fortunate that the Omaha Chamber job was open. And I threw my hat in the ring at the very last moment possible and was fortunate enough to make my way through the interview process and get the position. So timing, I suppose, luck, good fortune, all that kind of good stuff. They had a role to play in me getting here.
Yeah. Well, the Omaha community has certainly changed a lot since 2003.
It has.
It's grown considerably. So I just wanted to kind of take a trip down memory lane and, what are some of your more memorable events that have happened, whether they're chamber related or not, as you've been here?
I've been continually impressed with Omaha. Just sort of doesn't sit still. There's this expectation that there's always what's next. And when I got here, the first week I was here, they were doing the ribbon cutting for what was then the Quest Center. The Hilton Omaha had just opened. Gallup had opened up about 6 months earlier than that. And so if you think about what we've seen in the riverfront area and NoDo since then, it's been an ongoing, continual process of redevelopment. And really, we've seen that all across Omaha, from Midtown Crossing to Exarban Village to everything from 120th West, which frankly was very little development out there when I first got here, and it's continued to grow all the way out well past 204th Street now. So I think that the continued growth of the community has been pretty remarkable. I think the commitment that was made by city fathers to put a lot of our cultural and sports amenities in downtown brought the ability for downtown to have new life from what had really happened in the 80s when a lot of businesses sort of deserted downtowns across the country. Omaha had that happen too. But I think with corporate investments by the likes of the World Herald and Union Pacific and First National and ConAgra and fill in the blanks of all the companies that invested from the early 90s on. And then the cultural amenities and sports amenities that were put there breathed new life into downtown, which brought more energy and more ability to do more projects across the city. So it's been just fun to see Omaha go vertical and to see more parts of Omaha, see kind of villages pop up in the middle of a city like Midtown Crossing and Exarban Village that I probably wouldn't have seen in prior decades. So we've been fortunate to be here during all of that.
Yeah. It's certainly been an amazing thing to watch, and also just such a great community, and just really proud to be a part of it, and everything going on. Yeah. So I want to ask you, so the Chamber is one of the largest, most highly accredited chambers in the nation, the Omaha Chamber.
Yeah. Yep.
Why is that?
I'd like to say it's because I'm here, but that's not the case. We have a business community in Omaha that, as you know, from the work that you do, is truly remarkable. They have high expectations of themselves and high expectations of the community. And we've been fortunate at the Chamber to be the place where a lot of the business focus has been placed in areas of development, international work, public policy, infrastructure, et cetera. And so the business community keeps giving us more and more jobs to do and the resources to get those done. And then what's really unique about Omaha is that these leaders don't just say, it's the Chamber's job to do this, we're going to go let them do it. No. These leaders serve on our boards, they serve on our executive committee, they take time, energy to really commit and get projects done. Mm-hmm. So whether it's with us or with United Way or the Boy Scouts or the Urban League, just fill in the blank. There are corporate engagers here that you will not see engaged in other communities. And so the willingness for a CEO of a Fortune 500 company to sit across the table from his or her peers and say, let's get this done, and then roll up their sleeves and make it happen, adds even more credibility to the programs and policies and programs that the Chamber is engaged with. So it helps us build credibility. So we have a larger number of members than you might expect for a community of our size. The accreditation process is really about running the Chamber like a business.
Sure.
So we pay a lot of attention to P&L, just like you do. We worry about revenue and expenses. We want to make sure we have all the structures and systems in place to make it happen. And then we ask the U.S. Chamber to come in and assess whether or not we've done all that stuff right. And so being a 5-star accredited chamber means that we're one of only 1% of the 7,000 chambers in the country that have that 5-star accreditation.
Yeah.
So, we try and make sure that not only do we think we're doing a good job, but then have somebody come in and measure it from the external and tell us whether or not we're doing the things right that we need to do.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I have to say congratulations, because it does take leadership, and, your involvement paves the way for everybody being involved. So you are definitely a piece of the puzzle when it comes to that.
Thank you. I will accept the piece of the puzzle analogy. I think that does work. But you got to have all the other pieces of the puzzle come together and to form that cohesive picture. And I think Omaha is one of the best in the world at making those kind of things happen.
Yeah, I would agree. So let's talk a little bit. You have a new initiative called Code that what are we in just a few months of this kind of being developed?
Well, actually, it has been very vocal and very visible for the last few months.
Okay.
But actually, it started in 2017.
Oh, okay.
We started our Omaha 2040 process, which is the vision for what could Omaha be by 2040. Okay. And part of that was a recognition that demographically, Omaha and Nebraska were going to be changing dramatically over the next 20 years. In that we are now about 25% ethnically diverse as a population, and the studies all tell us that by 2040 we'll be majority non-white in this community. Mm-hmm. So we asked ourselves, are we ready for that? And how can we be helpful in using that shift from a demographic perspective to a competitive advantage for our community? What if Omaha could become one of the most inclusive cities in America? What if we use that as a competitive advantage for keeping people here, attracting people here, and building the talent base that we need for our companies and for our community? And so we embarked upon a process after 2040 was completed to build our new 5-year strategy called Prosper Omaha 2.0, which basically said over the next 5 years, let's build a series of first steps towards accomplishing that 2040 vision. And one of those first steps was building the Code Council, which stands for our commitment to opportunities for diversity and equity. Mm-hmm. And so we put in place a staffer and a committee whose job really was to help companies become more adept at hiring diverse personnel and to build inclusive cultures in our companies so that once you've hired that diverse personnel, they stay.
Sure.
And then to start looking at the community as well and to say what kind of cultural amenities we need to have in our community to make sure that the community is also inclusive once these individuals left the office and went back to their neighborhoods, were their neighborhoods also inclusive places. So we started engaging in this work really back in 2017 and 18. And then the spring came around, and the civil unrest that we saw across the country and that we've also seen here seemed to coincide really well with the mission of our code committee. And from a timing perspective, we had a group that we actually created last fall called CEOs for Code, which were a collection of companies who had signed a pledge that said they would work hard at becoming more diverse and inclusive at their business place. And we had a meeting scheduled for a Wednesday in June, and it just happened to be the Wednesday after the George Floyd incident in Minneapolis. And I think we had 40 companies originally signed up for that meeting, and by that Wednesday, we had 150 companies signed up for the meeting. As a result of that meeting, we then created the We Will Pledge, which you've probably seen, which was a collection now of more than 270 companies who have said, you know what, we can do this in Omaha. We can make Omaha the most inclusive community in the country, and we can abolish racism and sexism from the face of the Omaha landscape if we're really focused on it. And the business community was willing to take a leadership role in partnership with organizations that have been doing this work for many, 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 many years. So that's why you've seen more and more about code over the past several months, because timing was such that it was time for it to sort of do more work and be more aggressive and more intensive about its purpose.
Yeah, and there's a lot of information about code on the chamber website. I took the pledge, and we're actually doing a special section on it in the October issue. It's going to be our cover story, but yeah, so encourage people to go to the website, the chamber website, to get more involved.
If you go to omahachamber.org and you type in We Will, or type in code, type in We Rise, all of those will get you to a place where you can see what we're doing in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space.
Yeah, because We Rise, was that the initiative that kind of came from COVID-19? Okay, so let's talk about that. I want to talk a little bit about that as well.
So March rolled around, and we were all sort of moving along as though 2020 was going to be this remarkable economic
banner year.
We had visions of grandeur with all of the big events that were going to happen here this year, and just really going to be a marvelous year. And then, of course, COVID happened. And we, like a lot of other businesses, in the middle of March, went remote. And we remain remote even today. But the interesting part of this is that our company started asking us questions that we didn't have answers to. So what can we do to reopen our business? What government regulations do we have to fulfill in order to make sure we're doing it not only legally, but safely for our customers and for our employees? Where's good information on the nature of the disease so that we can make good health-informed decisions about getting our businesses back open and treating our employees well? And what are we allowed to do? At what point does the governor and the mayor have choices that they're making for us? And so we are limited on what we can do. So we created a document called We Rise, which was part one of an economic recovery strategy. You can find that on our website again. And it's a great primer on what you must do, what you're allowed to do, what choices you can make, and where you can get the information that you need to make all the decisions necessary to get your business back open, get your people back to work, and treat your customers safely. Once we got that document done, we immediately started pivoting to, okay, this economic recession is no fun. We want to get to a point where we're not just entering recovery, but sprinting into recovery. So what do we have to do to accelerate economic recovery here? So we created 6 task forces. That's called our Thrive 2020 task force. And we had a task force on small business, economic growth, public policy, diversity, equity, and inclusion, talent, and entrepreneurship. And put council members together and said, I want you to create for us, actually Mindy Simon and Tim Burke, who are sort of the chairs of this thing, and James Blackledge from Mutual said, let's see if we can't identify those items that can help us accelerate into recovery rather than trudge into recovery. And so those task forces have been meeting, and the executive committee has seen some of their recommendations and raised some money to fund some of those things. And so I would imagine in the very near future, we'll be a lot more public about what those things are. But many of them are already ongoing, and many of them are making a difference already and kind of clearing the path so that we can be out there and growing the economy again faster than we might see in other places.
And that is so important. I mean, there are a lot of places to find out the health, the health issues and the do's and don'ts for health, but business, not so much. And it's incredibly valuable.
We've been, again, blessed with the fact that we have University of Nebraska Medical Center, global center for health security in this market. They're a world leader in helping with this pandemic, and they've given us, as a community and as business owners, remarkable resources that we can use to make really good, informed decisions for our employees. And now it's up to us as business leaders to say, okay, now it's our turn. Yeah. Now that we're informed, and now we know what we can do, we need to do it. And so how do we get out of each other's way, get that optimism back, start thinking about what Omaha really can be as a result of this, and turn the tables on the pandemic. It's not gone yet, but we're managing it. And
right.
If we do it right, if we do those three things that Dr. Gold likes to talk about, wear a mask, wash your hands, stay socially distanced. If we do those things, we can still run our businesses. We can still be successful running our businesses with those. But if we do those things, we can actually tamp down the spread of the virus, and we can be back to whatever normal is going to look like next a lot sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. Well, in the last minute or so, I think you might have answered this, but I'll ask it, just a few other thoughts about the future for the Omaha community.
It is really strong. Even throughout this pandemic, we've seen companies adding employees. We've seen construction coming out of the ground. We've seen remarkable new projects announced. I know I'm paid to be optimistic, so you'd expect me to give this all flowery kind of thing. But in reality, it's true. All you have to do is get in your car and drive around and see all this great stuff that's happening, and you can see that Omaha has a great future.
Yeah.
In large measure, that's because of our people, and it's because of this never die attitude. But an awful lot of it is just the fact that, Nebraska is this remarkable place. It's got remarkable leadership and remarkable people, and we got to take advantage of that while we can. So I think the next few years are going to be Omaha's years, and we'll come out of this with flying colors and do really well as we move into the next decade.
Absolutely. And I will say optimism and looking at what else is possible, that is what creates the future. Mm-hmm. Looking at things in a negative light, that does not create a future that we want to live in. So
we all fall down on that every now and then, right? Something happens and you get, woe is me, woe is me. But as quick as we can pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps and just start doing things again, the sooner we'll start realizing that we've conquered this thing, and it's time to move on and conquer some new challenges.
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect ending to this wonderful conversation, David. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for asking me. I appreciate it. Congratulations on your 100th show. That's terrific.
Yeah, thank you. It's hard to believe, and looking forward to working with you more in the future. So we'll hopefully see each other soon.
I'm sure we will. Take care.
All right, you too. Thanks. Well, welcome everybody. I'm so pleased today to be chatting with Carmen Tapio. She's the president and CEO of North End Teleservices. Carmen, thank you so much for joining me today.
Andy, it is such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
So I want to just start off a little bit about your history because you are not from Omaha. You're actually from the Virgin Islands is where you were born. So yeah, let's just talk about, how you got into Omaha, how you came here to be.
Andy, I actually wasn't born in the Virgin Islands. My parents are from the Virgin Islands. So my mother is from a British island. She's from Tortola, and my father is from a U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Thomas. I, oddly enough, was born in Montana. So,
Okay.
Kind of a Midwestern girl by birth, but by way of the Virgin Islands. And my family was military, and so, we lived a lot of different places, and moved here in 1975 from Guam. So we spent some time not only, being a family from the Virgin Islands, but living on islands like Guam, and we were stationed in Puerto Rico as well, but we moved here in 75.
Well, so you really have had, you talk a little bit in your article about the globe, just being global, but you literally have lived around the globe. So,
yeah.
And one of the things I do want to mention is you are our game changer woman for the next edition that we have coming out in about a month or so. But let's talk a little bit, there's so much that's happened between you getting to North and Teleservices. So let's just talk a little bit about that journey, and then I want to dive into North and Teleservices.
Okay. I've had a great opportunity, Andy, to do a lot of things in my career. And quite honestly, sometimes when I look back on my career, I forget that I did certain things because I've been so blessed in the variety of places that I've lived and things that I've had the opportunity to do. And, I would just say early on in my career, being in a service industry, I've worked places like our wonderful Henry Dooley Zoo here in Omaha, and spent some time working at Village Inn, learning about the food service industry, but really more about customer service there. And then, moving into business at a pretty young age and working at some of our large companies like First Data Resources, which really set me on the path of my career as what I would say initially was a generalist in a lot of different things, working in a lot of functional disciplines, and then finding my way to a career in contact center services ultimately.
Yeah. I love this quote that your father taught me when I was in my 20s that it's great to have a plan for your life and it's great to write it down, but it's more important to keep a vision in your mind for what your life can be. And that kind of gets brought up several times during the article. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. I was having this conversation with a young millennial person who is embarking upon her career and also thinking about entrepreneurship. And she was really struggling with, kind of her path of life. And my father did teach me when I was in my, very early 20s that it really all begins here, begins in your mind's eye. And writing it on paper is great, but if you don't believe it and if you can't envision it, then it's hard to actually achieve it. And he told me that, in my being a young person and somewhat skeptical, it's like, right, Dad,
Sure. Been there. Yeah.
Been there. And he was right. He was right. I was able to set some goals in my life at a fairly young age, at a very young age. One of them, for example, was to own my first home by the time I was 21 years old. And I found my way there. It was a goal that I envisioned, and it was a goal that I achieved. And so that is a practice that I've used in my life. And it's amazing to me the number of times that I can look back and say, okay, how did I get here? I couldn't have planned this if I had plotted it on paper, but I got there somehow.
Yeah. And I want to just touch a little bit on just some of the challenges, because I know we talk a lot about diversity. This is our diversity issue, and going through the corporate world and all that, being, you said at times, one of the only African-American women, maybe a few African-American men, as you kind of, and trying to find, establish who you are and your own personality. Can you just chat a little bit about that?
It is sometimes, difficult as a woman, and, back in the 80s and early 90s, certainly, oftentimes being the only Black person in the room. And, I say that, but I also tell people even today that, while it may have been challenging for me or for us, it's a good thing to be the first, right? It means you're there and you're charting a path for others going forward. And so I was fortunate to have people in my life, including my parents, that taught me I could do anything that I set my mind to. But I also had some really wonderful mentors and sponsors, what I would say were sponsors who presented opportunities to me that I could say yes to. I could learn a lot. I could really gain new skills and have new opportunities to do different things. And as I said, be comfortable with being uncomfortable in being the first or being the only, and making sure that through my career, bringing other people along as well, and bringing diversity, equity, and inclusion to the forefront of conversation. So it can be a challenge, but it can also be a great opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about North End Teleservices, kind of in a nutshell. So how did that come to be?
I actually had a consulting business prior to North End Teleservices called Core Advantage Consulting, and worked as a strategist in several different disciplines, helping companies, small businesses, but also very large enterprises look at branding and marketing and service and operations and all of that. And so I was hired as a consultant to help come up with a business plan to bring jobs to Northeast Omaha. And that really was the laying the groundwork for what North End Teleservices is today. So we started as a nonprofit in 2015. We are actually just celebrated our 5-year anniversary, September 1st, and saw that not only could we have a mission of creating jobs and changing lives, which is what it originally our mission was and remains, but the extent to which that mission has expanded to holistic care of our employees is something that I couldn't have imagined back in 2015.
Yeah.
2018, I took over ownership of the company and am the sole owner of North End today.
Right. Well, congratulations on that. I just know, also just being a woman too, and being, for me in the publishing business, it's, it has its challenges, but having that ownership and being able to lead a company and being the visionary, it's just a wonderful opportunity.
It's a huge opportunity, Andy, that it also is an encouragement, I think, and an example for others, for other women to lead and to be in business. Being an entrepreneur is a challenge on its own, but certainly being a woman in business, and we know what it takes to give it our all. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears involved. We try to make it look easy, but we know what it really takes, and I think that serves as a great example for other women as well and other entrepreneurs.
So fostering diversity, inclusion, opportunity in the workplace and in the community, that's something that I know you've said that you're passionate about. Just tell us some of the activities and initiatives that you're involved in.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion, I say it's just a part of my DNA. And so it's an extension of who I am as a person. It's an extension of who I am as a business leader. And I've committed myself and also my organization, to be a good example of what it can look like in the workplace. And it's one of our values. Some of the initiatives that I'm involved in include, for Blueprint Nebraska, which was a state initiative to develop a strategy for the state of Nebraska. I was council chair for Blueprint Nebraska. And I'm also council chair for diversity, equity, and inclusion, what we call commitment to opportunity, diversity, and equity for the Greater Omaha Chamber of Commerce. And I also am council chair for our Thrive 2020 task force initiative, which is specific to economic recovery during this time and making sure that happens in an inclusive way. In a former life, I was chief diversity officer for Carlson Companies for a number of years, and ultimately responsible for social responsibility for Carlson Companies globally.
So what words of encouragement or inspiration, would you give women today as they're kind of coming up into their careers and really kind of trying to find their mark and their way?
I think, Andy, the conversation of being your whole self, and as women, there are things that are innate to us as women that men don't necessarily have, right? And so it's sometimes we're taught or told that being who we are as women is not acceptable in the workplace. And I would say that one of the strengths that we have is our ability to lead with our heart. And so that is something that, when we learn, and I have this conversation with with other women my age, we have an instinct that was given to us as a gift. And the more that we learn to listen to and rely upon our instinct along with other information and data, but your instinct is rarely ever wrong. And so I would say those two things, leading with your heart, and then also paying attention to your instinct and trusting your instinct in life and in business and really everything that you do.
Absolutely. Well, last minute or so, kind of future thoughts for your business, future thoughts for you, for the community.
Future thoughts, Andy, is I'm so hopeful, really from a business perspective. We want to continue to grow. We were recently named to Inc.'s 5,000 list of fastest growing private companies in America. And we would like to continue with our growth strategy and doing what we do in communities to bring jobs to people in communities and to change lives. So that's one. And then I'm really hopeful about the future in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm liking what I'm seeing with engagement at all levels in our community and in business. And so I say, we've got to push this boulder up and over the mountain once and for all. And there are a lot of people that are working hard to do that. So I'm really hopeful about, seeing change happen in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on the Fortune 5000. That's, to me, just
thank you,
especially with what you've done in a short amount of time with the current company. And I just want to say thank you. It's so great. I mean, we just talked before we got started to hit record that we haven't actually met before. So it's such a pleasure to get to know you through this conversation. And I look forward to seeing you in the future.
Same here. Pleasure is mine. Thank you for the conversation. I really appreciate it.
You are welcome.
All
and
right.
Folks, we'll be right back.
Thank you.
Well, welcome everybody. I'm so excited to be talking to Janyne Peak Emsick today. She was our Game Changer Woman this month. And there's so many great things we're going to chat about. Janyne, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, Andy, thank you for inviting me. What an honor. Thank you.
Well, let's just talk a little bit. Your executive coach, that's one of your businesses. You do a lot of different things, and that's a lot of the focus in the Metro Magazine publication this month. But let's just talk a little bit about you. So where'd you come from? Why are you here? What brought you to Omaha? You've got a story to tell.
Well, it's actually kind of fun because it's a perfect week, because I woke up this weekend and I said, oh my goodness, this is the 12-year anniversary of when my husband and I met, and when we had our first conversation, and I actually said, Alexa, when did the Chicago Bears play the Colts? In the fall of 2008, and I got the date. It was September 7th at 7:15 p.m. And the reason that's important is because my husband called me that day, and it's the first time we spoke. We'd met on eHarmony, and I was driving from my brother's house in Chicago with my top down on the convertible, listening to the Super Bowl rematch. And I told him, I said, if you want to talk, you're going to have to turn on the game and then give me play-by-play as we're having a conversation. And so I turned off my radio, and my very introverted husband, Michael from Omaha is what he was called then, and I ended up talking through all 4 quarters of the Bears-Colts game that night, and the Bears won, unlike the Super Bowl. So literally, this is our fall when we remember when we met, and I remember a year later I moved to Omaha, Nebraska.
Wow, because you are, and I'm quoting you from the story, a die-hard Chicago Bears fan.
I am. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, my Walter Payton jersey is right over here because I'll be making chili later for the NFL season starting. So I am. And my joke is, as a diehard Bears fan, that I've learned about what it means to be committed in a relationship, because we have seen a few highs and lots of lows. And if you stick with them, you can stick through anything.
Yeah. So you got here to Omaha. You and your husband, Michael, married. You guys started an architectural firm, correct?
Mm-hmm. So actually, and I had put this together in that conversation we had on September 7th. One of the first things he shared with me was that he had always had a dream of having an architecture firm. And we married in 2009, that fall. And that was always kind of simmering in our kind of conversations. And then things seemed to be right to do that. In May of 2012, we launched Emsick Architects, and that's his dream come true. And it turns out that it becomes a way for me to kind of practice what I preach and walk my own talk in helping provide leadership for that firm when I'm not an architect. It really is about culture and identifying systems that we need to thrive. And it's been kind of fun. We set it up kind of like my firm, where it's been digital, it's been virtual from the beginning. We have 10 team members that have been all over the country and clients that are all over the country, which kind of teed us up to be well positioned when COVID hit, because we didn't have to change a lot of our processes to go digital at the time.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your coaching company. And I know that's what you're passionate about, and really helping women and leaders, women to become leaders, and people in women in leadership positions. So yeah, how did that begin? And let's talk a little bit about that.
So, so my undergraduate is in theater, and I worked in human resources as a recruiter for a little bit. It was like matchmaking. Felt like it was casting a play. And I really wanted to get into organizational development. And then I began to pursue that in education. And ultimately, I felt like what I wanted to do was have the freedom to have my own business where I could serve as a consultant. I'm wired as a consultant, much more than wired as somebody who would be longstanding. I'm a change agent at heart. And so to be a consultant, and that gave me the freedom, the resources, the flexibility to do some of the global service work that's really important to me. And so it was really interesting. Right on the heels of launching the business, for the first few years I was in grad school, and then I moved and was full-time on my own. And I was given opportunities to teach in Burma and the Philippines, and then later to go to the Congo. And I don't know that I would have been able to have those opportunities had I not launched my own firm.
Right.
And so that just was a trajectory setter for me.
Yeah. So let's talk. So just what is your executive coach? I mean, what is it?
So yourexecutivecoach.com is a coaching and consulting firm, and we help executives and executive teams navigate hard places. So when they're feeling stuck and when they've tried to work through things on their own and it hasn't worked, and they need a fresh lens to come in and help provide clarity. One of my clients described it as, like, everybody knows there's a pink elephant in the room, but if you sat us down at a table and asked all of us to draw that pink elephant, it would look different for everybody. Mm-hmm. And you came in and helped us understand what that shared pink elephant was and helped us provide a path towards unity. And that is kind of the nature of what I do, either with an individual executive or with an executive team where they're feeling stuck.
Yeah. So there are other things, you have other roles. So let's talk about Professional Women's Connect. You're co-founder of that. Is that correct?
Yep. Yep.
And when did that start? It seems like I've been going to these events for years.
Well, that's interesting. So when I moved here, I married Mike. He's one of 9 kids. Figure that out. And there's a gazillion Emsicks around town, but many of them are teachers, or they're in the insurance industry, as opposed to being in kind of the stream where I would have connections into business. And so, and Andy, I don't know about you, but I hate networking. I am not a good networker. People are surprised by that. I'm a wallflower. Yeah. And unless I have a job to do, and when I have a job to do, then it's a whole different ballgame. And so I moved here and kind of knew nobody. And it was serendipitous. We met a gal at a golf outing who was there because somebody couldn't make it, and she was a master networker and invited me to meet some other people, and I could just go for 10 minutes, and I met somebody there who thought, I said, and I'm supposed to say thank you to these people. So I sent a thank you email, and this person said, let's go ahead and have some coffee, and which we did. And then I met someone else, and through these kind of just one-off conversations, I met Tammy Murr, Dr. Tammy Murr, who at the time was the director of College of St. Mary's Masters of Organizational Leadership, and then a woman named Diane Stewart. She's now with the First National Bank Foundation, and they had a shared interest of finding a way to create intersections for women to get connected in Omaha. And I thought, well, I'm good at making things happen. I have zero network. And so the 3 of us met. I introduced Diane and Tammy, and we said, what if? And so Diane and Tammy sent an event invitation out to their mailing list, because I knew nobody, and I served as the MC, and we got like 100 women to come to our first event. And we've done it as a service from the beginning, and it's something where no one is making any money off of it, but it's creating this opportunity for intersections. So then another serendipitous relationship, I met a woman named Sella Quinn, who is kind of the founder of Women's Networking in Omaha. Yes. And I interviewed Sella. Sella didn't want to do a presentation. She said, what if we did an interview? And I had been thinking, gosh, I'd love to interview some of these women. I'm a sociologist by training. I love doing interviews. And so Sella then opened her network up to me, and many of the women from that network have been featured as our guests. Yeah. So for nearly a decade, so you're right, for nearly a decade, we have been offering these live events 2 times a year, featuring one of our premier executives from Omaha, Nebraska, featuring her story. And we consistently attract about 100 women from the C-suite to the front line across industries. It's just been wonderful. Yeah.
So I want to ask you, what are some of the women that you interviewed?
Okay. So Barb Schaefer was one of the early folks from Union Pacific, the mayor, right, as she was elected at the time. And it was hard to get time with her. And that one was really fun, because I called her local library from her hometown and got a bunch of research and pictures from her yearbook, kind of surprised her. That was fun. Sella Quinn, Karen Gracke from Borsheim's, Joan Squires from Omaha Performing Arts. We just did Christy Johnson, who is our FBI special agent in charge of our office here, just for a little bit longer. And she actually was supposed to be live and was canceled as a result of COVID. Yeah. The FBI wasn't allowed to gather in groups first, and then the Scott Center canceled events. And that provided us an opportunity. Once I got over the disappointment of having lots of things canceled this past March. It's interesting, Andy, you probably have sensed this. Those of us who are in the business of inspiring others and helping others navigate change, well, we go through those same human responses to things as everyone else. And so I was feeling stuck. Anyway, and we had the opportunity to take Christy online.
Yeah. So that'll bring me to my next question. We've got just a minute 2 left, but you really had to pivot. You had to kind of look at what else is possible with this? And you did go online, and didn't that bring in like a lot more women?
It's actually kind of amazing. So the first thing that we did, I thought, gosh, I wonder if after a couple of weeks, I wonder if these women would still like to get together, and began reaching out to the mailing list. And then I thought, well, shoot, why don't I use my whole mailing list? And maybe there are other women that would benefit from this. And in 36 to 48 hours, we had 275 registrations.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, it was, and this is not a space that I have existed in. And so it was absolutely fascinating. And then that has transformed into monthly webinars that we're offering. And so once a quarter, we offer Professional Women Connect Global is what we're calling it now, because we have had women attend from all across the globe. Then we do a summit of some sort, and QLI has been partnering with us on that with Pat Kearns, the CEO, and then Dr. Jeff Snell. So we get into brain science, and then a Clarity in Crisis webinar that features an executive talking about leadership in crisis. And so it's actually transformed my business as a result of Professional Women Connect and going online with that during COVID.
Yeah, I just love it. Was looking at your website today. There's so much information there, so people can connect with you and kind of get plugged into these different areas at yourexecutivecoach.com.
And there's a webpage, yourexecutivecoach.com/monthly-webinars that just lists these webinars that you can sign up for. And so we try to keep that updated so that you can see what's coming and what you'd like to register for.
Yeah, I just think it's amazing because I get your emails, and I've seen kind of what's transpired over, I mean, what are we, 6 months now?
Yes.
COVID-19, but really seeing a lot of engagement from you and everything you're doing. And first of all, I mean, congratulations. You know,
Oh, thank you.
Something challenging happens, and you just need to really look at what else is possible versus, oh my gosh, you know. So I'm excited for you, and I'm excited for the women that are connecting with you through these different avenues, including me. I love tuning in. So, well, our time is up. That went by really fast. So,
well,
again, wanting everybody to connect with you through yourexecutivecoach.com, and then monthly to find out the monthly meetings.
Monthly -webinars.
Okay.
And if I can say one thing,
absolutely,
Andy, you have spoken at our events for Professional Women Connect, and I remember when you caught your passion for philanthropy and telling powerful stories about people making a difference through philanthropy in our community. And you have a similar story, because how I have seen your publications grow, all of this. So congratulations to you for exactly the same kind of story, but in a different genre. So well done.
Thank you so much. What a joy having this conversation with you today, Janyne. So I will see you soon.
And we need to have a walking meeting. Let's do that one.
We do.
Days.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Take care. Thank you. Thank you all for joining me today. I'm so grateful for all of you, and I'm so grateful for this community. I'm just going to end with a question, and I'm going to encourage you to ask this question. What else is possible? What else is possible? That is such a powerful question. When you ask that question, what else is possible for me, for you? What else is possible for our community? What else is possible for your business, for my business? for our nonprofits, for the nation, for the planet. What else is possible? Again, it's so powerful because it opens up space to allow new opportunities, new possibilities, new visions, new ideas to come in. A lot of times we come to conclusions and we make things right or wrong, good or bad. But when you ask what else is possible, it allows everything to be in the mix and to really be able to create a future that we all want, that is empowering everyone. So again, my friends, thank you again for joining me today. And I ask, what else is possible? I'll see you back here next week.